everyone's going to hear. So be careful.
So then I shouldn't tell them that I'm drying my underwear outside, and if they dropped by, they could see it.
Don't mention that.
Oops. Good luck to them. I am not, in fact.
Half the triangle is trying to find your house now.
Well, good luck with that.
Okay, let's see if we successfully. Yeah, there we are on YouTube, and there we are on the Facebook group. I have to start it so that you'll see it delayed there. And now I'll attempt to create a singularity by bringing up the audio. See if we successfully. Yeah, there we are on YouTube.
Audioception.
And
hey, I heard you like podcasts, so we put a podcast inside your podcast so you can podcast while you're podcasting.
And it will last forever. We are on the Facebook group.
So many.
I have to start it.
It just keeps going smaller and smaller and smaller.
And now I'll attempt to. Yeah, and I'm getting confused about the timer. So, okay, so I started the timer late, so it's coming up on 4:00 in a few seconds. But we're a slave.
That's okay.
We're a slave to the timer. We can't, because the audience is going to wait for it to go to 0.
It'll give people a chance to get their lovely cup of tea with a lid on their own, and then they can join us.
Well, that was the whole idea of the timer in the first place. Because I have to start everything early because I can never tell when YouTube and Facebook are really going to show things. I've seen other people do this. So, and you don't want them to just sit there going, "Where's the show? Where's the show?" So now they know when the show is going to start.
I want a timer when I do things on video on the internet. Of course, I never do things on video on the internet, so then there's that. Okay, I do this thing on video on the internet.
You do this, yeah.
And I get a timer. Ooh, look at that.
Which at one point, when I was checking to see if you were going to be on the show, you said, no, you now organize your life around being on the show.
I do. And then last week I was like, I'm going to get the link. I'm going to get the link. I'm going to get the link. I'm going to get. And then I was like, you know what? Because I've been on the show once when you didn't do one on a Sunday because it was just too nice of a weather. And so I was like, that must be what's happening.
And it turns out, no, we've been communicating on a Reddit chat, and it just was accumulating everything that I was sending you, and dropped
it all on me at once. It was like, here, and it was like, Jen, where are you? Jen, what's going on? Are you alive? Are you okay? And I was like, ah!
So there was a show.
Yeah,
last week.
Yeah, I discovered that.
And you would have been great on it. It would have been great to have you there. Brendan is not here this week. He's doing the Mother's Day thing. Oh, I guess we ought to start the show on a Reddit chat, and it just was accumulating everything that I was sending you.
I can hear you. I can hear you again. All on me at once. It was here. I can't. Like, Jen, we're on.
I can't make it stop.
Make it stop.
Guess I better make the YouTube stop too. Okay. Yeah. So we were. Oh no, I was gonna start the show, and this is how we do that. From the studio in the bonus room above the garage on the north side of Cary, sequestered at the foot of Mount Belzoni, this is the Triangle Talk Show. And I am one of your hosts. I am Gary Pierce.
And from the Yellow Room, on the border of Carborough and the People's Republic of Chapel Hill, sequestered at the foot of Mount Okanichi, I'm actually at a mountain. And on the side of the hill with the chapel up top, I'm Nanny Jen, host of NannyCast.
And I'm going to acknowledge that you are on something of a mountain. They call it a mountain. But
it's a mountain.
It's a mountain.
Technically.
Okanichi. Technically, they call it a mountain. We'll go with
There's no kind of correct, like technically correct.
We'll go with it. It's a mountain. And this is episode 88. Politics, I guess. May 10th, 2020. It's winter again, or at least it's early spring. What's going on out there? It's really weird. And
it's very sunny. We've had rain, and I'm drinking tea because it's cold.
And it was practically freezing last night. There were frost warnings.
Yes. Yeah. I mailed for Mother's Day. I mailed my mother and my stepmother halyard fabric masks, and both of them were saying, "Oh, can it survive a hard freeze?" Because they knew it had been delivered, but they hadn't been out to get the mail, and it froze overnight.
And it was what?
Which part? The mask?
What did you send them?
Halyard. So Halyard is a company that makes autoclave fabric. The wraps, if you've ever been to the dentist and seen them unwrap their instrument case, it's that blue stuff on the outside of the instrument case. And it is a fabric with a filter capacity. It filters out, it keeps moisture out and bacteria out. Now, it's ineffective against a virus, right? Because viruses are smaller than bacteria, but at least my high-risk mother and stepmother will not be getting sick from something bacteriological and then clogging up the healthcare system that way.
And you say viruses are smaller than bacteria as if, of course, we all know that.
Well, now you do.
Now we do. So the mask that I've been using, the ordinary cloth mask, is too porous to stop.
It's too porous to stop viruses. It might be too porous to stop some bacteria, but what it is good at and what it is designed for is protecting other people from you. The mask you've been using is not a filter mask. And it is really good at grabbing your spit and being like, no, I'm going to be the towel that holds your spit right here so it doesn't go over there and get somebody else sick.
Okay, so the virus is in droplets.
In your spit,
contained within droplets. Yeah, and then so it's not free-floating virus. It has got to have something medium that's being transmitted in.
Yes, viruses have not yet figured out the power of flight. That's limited to birds and humans with our airplanes and Superman.
All right, so I wear the mask whenever I'm out in public. I realize I am protecting you by doing that. I am not protecting me. I think it's a little bit of theater, but it who knows if it saves.
I mean, if because of the lack of testing, if you're alive, there's a chance that your breath happens to be infectious and you just don't know because you've got no symptoms. So it's kind of the responsible thing to do, right?
Yeah. And it doesn't even have to be one of those things where if it saves one life, then it's worth doing. If it just makes somebody else feel more comfortable, it's worth doing. So
I mean, there's nothing like a thing on your face to say, hey, I'm an adult and I'm capable of taking responsibility for my own body. Which leads us right into our topic. See what I did there?
Yes. The topic, the title of the show is Biden, ? #Me Too, ! Biden, Me Too. That is a very ambiguous title. And I pretty much always aim to make the titles somewhat ambiguous. And I think I've succeeded in this one. We're going to talk about Joe Biden. This is the Triangle Talk Show. It's not the USA presidential race talk show, but we all have to decide, unless we've decided we're going to vote for Trump, we have to decide what we're going to do with the Biden thing.
I just want to point out that Bill Weld is still running, and he's a great alternative to Trump. Those of you who are really attracted to Trump's policies, but really kind of hate his attitude, Weld has got the same policies, and he is an adult.
And I think, I can't remember his name. The congressman that bailed from the Republican Party, didn't become a Democrat, became an independent. Now that
would be Weld.
No, this is I would recognize if that was his name. He's going to run as a libertarian. Justin Amash.
Oh, poor libertarians. First they had Weld, and now they're getting, it seems to be the bailed from the Republican Party place to go. Although that said, the Libertarian Party is really leaning in, especially the Libertarian Party of North Carolina. Man, I wish my friend Sarah were on this show right now because she is the emeritus political director of the Libertarian Party of North Carolina. They're really leaning into that Republican Party refugee status thing and trying to be true conservative, responsible adults in the new age.
Yeah, the Venn diagram of libertarian and Republican is not a big overlap. What, 50% would you guess? in terms of policies?
The modern Republican Party, yeah. Yeah.
Well, the Trump Republican Party, it's about zero.
Oh, no, it's totally zero. The way the libertarians are trending, which I will acknowledge is not the way the libertarians were 5 years ago, but they're pivoting, and they're pivoting beautifully. They are going toward just the financial conservative, small government, small L libertarian kind of thing, which used to be what the Republican Party claimed was its founding core principles.
And I guess libertarian have generally been on the social side of things. They've been hands off. Get the government out of my social life.
I'm probably going to get yelled at by my libertarian friends for this, but this is my understanding as they have led me to it. My understanding is that the Libertarian Party believes that the government should be hands-off because there should be no need for the government to get involved because people should already be being excellent to one another, and we shouldn't have problems that the government should need to solve.
This may be one of those shows where we need to be able to swear, so just letting you know you can if you want.
And say then there's me and my particular politics where I go, yeah, but there are assholes in the world, and they tend to run the show, and your philosophy and your party policy doesn't really account for assholes, and they're there. So what's your plan now?
Yeah, they go marching around downtown Raleigh with big guns.
But I do, in a sort of utopian world, I would love it if people voluntarily were excellent to one another. That would be great. I have no complaints there.
Yeah, and we can show them how. You and I are excellent to each other, and we hardly know each other. So that's a much better way to be. Why be antagonistic?
Yep.
So, we'll figure out the Biden thing in a minute. How is your life going? You've had 2 weeks to accumulate experience. I play Pokemon Go, which is probably and they've done, sorry, my nose is running from this hot tea. They have done this amazing set of events. Here,
so I have
got some
walking.
stuff you can. That's my problem.
I will blow my nose. No, so I've been doing a lot of walking due to Pokemon Go, and I have discovered how to chat with people on Discord while simultaneously playing Pokemon Go, and it requires having a million cords draped everywhere. I have my headset, because it has to be a wired headset for Discord going into my phone, and then the other end of my phone is the power cord going into my pocket where I have a battery pack, and I don't know what people think of me as I wander around.
Martian.
Yep.
Pokemon Go. I'm moderately familiar with it. My wife played it for a hot minute. They need to make a Pokemon in the shape of a little COVID. It's not a molecule. It's a particle, I guess.
I'm sure there is one. This is my first Pokemon game, so I'm unfamiliar with the entire amount of Pokemon that exist in the world, but there are some ones that are pretty close. They have one called Coughing and then one called Wheezing, and those look kind of like COVID. They're definitely a coronavirus with the spiky bits, and also it's coughing, which is I feel like that's everything coronavirus is right there.
Yeah, perfect. Fortunately, you can't catch it from your phone. As far as we know so far.
Unless you lick your phone.
And somebody else has licked it already.
Yes, I would not recommend licking your phone. There's a lot of gross on there beyond.
Yeah. I wash the surface of my phone off now and then, not quite as often as it ought to be, but now and then with soap and water and stuff. Carefully. And you have changed jobs, sort of.
I have.
You're in the same industry.
Same industry. The family I was working for in the past got COVID laid off. And then so I got COVID laid off, and now I've been COVID hired because, surprisingly or not surprisingly to listeners and viewers at home, childcare is still very, very necessary if you want to get any work done.
So the family that you're working for, we're not going to tell anybody who they are or anything about them other than, I'll ask, are they essential workers going to work, or are they hiding themselves up in their home offices and you keep the kids away?
They're hiding themselves up in their home offices and I'm keeping the kids away. Okay. They're educators, so they do have to work. They can't not work.
Yeah. And better that the kids are not tugging on their sleeves as they're teaching their classes.
I would say I do believe education is considered essential, but they're not frontline workers. I don't stand a chance of catching from them, which,
if they're staying home too.
Yeah.
Your nanny industry early on saw people catching it and people dying. Is that still a thing?
Yeah, people are still catching it. People are still dying. A nanny friend of mine reported that she's got 3 nannies or 3 people she knows that I don't on her Facebook friends list that have all reported a positive COVID-19 test this week alone.
Okay, it's still out there.
Yeah.
In North Carolina, apparently not so much. Enough, but
because we did the thing, guys.
Yeah, we did what we're supposed to do, and now we don't want to anymore. All right, so I'm glad that you picked up work right away. Was that part of the network that you've got that you were found, or how did someone find that you were available?
Surprisingly, this one came through care.com. Normally, in the 10 years I've been a nanny, I have never had a job from an outside source. It's always been some sort of word of mouth referral. This one came through care.com, and the mom and I were 2 alike minds from the beginning. And if you're going to hire a nanny, if I might just, steal the reins of your show, you really want to make sure it's a nanny who is absolutely 100% on the same page as you at all times about everything, so that you don't have to worry that your nanny might be presenting a sensitive topic in a way you didn't expect or whatever. Like, the mom and I are just absolutely on the same page. It's beautiful. We speak in the same language, and that's the kind of nanny family partnership you want.
Yeah. Well, you were saying they're educators, and you've been a teacher, so
yeah,
I can see where that thread might be followed. By the way, you're not taking over my show. This is our show. When you said that you align your life, you adjust your life to be part of the program, I just felt so good about that. So you're an equal partner. I've got the technology, but
I don't, and I appreciate it.
I have tried.
This is the kind of equal partnership I like, where I do far less of the work.
Yeah, it's sort of like being married to my wife. It's like we're equal partners. She does all the work. Actually, I do a lot of it these days. Not as much as I should, but still a lot of the housework stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's your house too. Why not? Yeah. Right?
Well, as if you were to look at what a house would look like if she were living on her own and I were living on my own, they would be very different. So we have different ideas about just how much trash we're willing to put up with mounting around us before we do something about it. But
I will say this. I've had male housemates before, male roommates over the course of my life, because as an extrovert, I don't want to live alone. Then I have no source of energy to steal from somebody else. So I've had male housemates, and they've always been better housekeepers than I have been. So this idea that women are cleaner and neater is not true.
Not universal anyway.
No. Me living alone is definitely trashier than me living with a male housemate. Yeah.
Cindy is not a neat freak, but a neat person in general. There are some specific areas of the house that we each control and are allowed to leave pretty much as trashed as we want them to be. For example, well, you can't see how bad it is back there, but I'm going to work on cleaning it up one day. And she's got a closet or two that look pretty bad, and there's some junk drawers. But in general, and especially surfaces that you touch and cook on and eat from and things like that, she's more obsessive than I am about it. But I
like to say I'm cluttered, but not dirty. All of the clutter has been dusted. There is no infectious used tissues or anything lying around. The trash is taken out before it smells. It's just, I have my board games in a stack on a surface that you can see rather than behind a closet door.
Yeah. My problem is that I fill any horizontal surface with something. And it doesn't get stacked too high. Somehow, once it's covered with maybe 2 layers, okay, 3 layers, it doesn't get more layers on it. I don't know why I can't leave a table uncovered. I got a work table that I can't work on because it's full of stuff. But it reaches that point and then it stops. I'm going to get to it someday. This is my contribution to what's going on for the week. For those of you that are on the audio audience, I'm holding up a roll of toilet paper. And I scored this a couple weeks ago when everyone was saying that you can't find toilet paper. And Harris Teeter had this on the shelf, and there were like 4 or 5 packages left. And it was late in the day. It was like 2 or 3 o'clock when I was going by there to pick up some stuff. And so I grabbed it without looking carefully at what it was. And now I'll unroll it, and you can tell.
It's my favorite kind of toilet paper. It's the Scott Single Ply. I love Scott Single Ply. Because it does not lint your butt crack.
Here.
There's nothing I abhor more than a linty butt crack.
Okay. I'm trying to decide whether that's too much information or not, but no, I'm going to go with it.
No, I'm just putting it out there. Like, those of you who are like, the cushier, the better, I promise you there is a better world out there. You just wad up a lot more of the single ply, and it's cushy.
Yeah, you do. You have to start with, about that much, about, a yard or so, and then you got what you need. And it's not totally wax paper. It's well, we have a few rolls of that to get through, but we've scored what Cindy prefers, and I do too. And now next time I'm using it, I'm going to be thinking about how much lint I'm leaving behind, literally behind. I got a question about the nanny business. This being Mother's Day. So my mom died a long time ago. So I don't have a biological mom to say Happy Mother's Day to. I do have a mother-in-law. So hi, Annetcha. And I have a stepmom, late in life stepmom. She will turn 100 later on this month. Unfortunately, 5 or 6 years ago, she went into dementia. She doesn't know who I am. She doesn't know who she is, and have no concept of today as Mother's Day. But so there's not much to do there. But I've collected elderly relatives, so I have extras. Anyway, it is Mother's Day. In the nanny business, I imagine there's such a thing as a sort of being mistaken for mom. Oh,
all the time. And it's one of those, if you want to be a nanny, you have to figure out kind of ahead of time, or when it happens, it'll blindside you, how you're going to deal with that. And so my strategy is, if it's somebody I'm never going to see again, and they're referring to me as mom to deliver a compliment about the child, oh, they're listening so well, or, oh, look, they can read, or, thank the child for sharing, mom, you've done a good job teaching them. I let it go, because it's what was it? The Buddhist 3 gates of speech. Is it kind? Is it necessary? And is it true? Move my hand so you guys can see that. It's not necessary to correct at that point over that. It is true that I'm not the mom, but it's sort of unkind, because then instead of saying, well, thank you for the compliment, or like, good job noticing that this kid has got some super duper skills, instead you're saying, well, you got that wrong. And that, but then if it's going to be somebody who's going to see the child again and again, or if they're trying to make a mom to mom connection, then, you kindly go, hey, well, I'm glad you think that I have such a good bond with the kid. That's the goal here. But I happen to be their nanny. I can put you in touch with their mom. So it's, I can't say there are no nannies out there, because, nannies are a subset of humanity, and in all humanity, there's always going to be that person. But most nannies are not trying to pretend to be a child's mom. They're merely deciding on not making somebody feel awkward in the moment for delivering a compliment if they let a mom comment pass unremarked.
So if that happens, and do the kids start to get confused about who's who?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the kids are totally confused, especially when somebody goes, listen to your mom, because they're trying to back you. It happens, and it's beautiful. And I love the it takes a village to raise a child thing. Like, sometimes it's time to go and the kid will be like, no, 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 no. And somebody else will help mean mug and they'll go, you need to listen to your mom. You need to go. She said it's time to go. And the kid will just pause and just be completely confused. Like, that's not my mom. Who? Listen to my mom. My mom hasn't said anything. What are you talking about, stranger? So at that point, then it becomes necessary, right? Is it kind? Is it necessary? Is it true? Then it becomes necessary to go, psst, I'm their nanny. And then you can just deliver it like that, and then the person who's trying to help you out will just mean mug and go, you need to listen to your nanny. She said it's time to go. It's a lot easier then.
Okay. So where do nannies fall on the Mother's Day thing? There's no nanny day, right? Or is there?
There is. In September, we have a whole week. It's called National Nanny Recognition Week, and it's not really for appreciation, although any time is a great time to appreciate your nanny. It is for recognition, which means that the goal is to get parents to admit openly that they have childcare assistance, to destigmatize having childcare assistance. Because unfortunately, there still is that stigma that especially women need to be super women, capable of having a career and being an always available parent and running a household and this and that. And that's way too much for any one person to do. So for National Nanny Recognition Week, that is the week where you're supposed to sort of publicly out yourself like, hey, I got help, which is normal. And it's supposed to be normal and it should be fine. And then you just challenge anybody. You're like, I dare you to say something. So we get that. And it's in September. So Mother's Day is entirely about moms, and nannies love to support that. I mean, absolutely love to support that. And sometimes parents will be like, hey, you're like a surrogate mom to the kid too when we're not there. We appreciate you too. So they'll take that as an opportunity to appreciate their nanny. But we do have National Nanny Recognition Week, which is by name and is a completely different time of the year.
Yeah. I was looking for the word surrogate. And I realized I didn't want to use it because it's got a different use when it comes to moms and and children and things. It's pregnancy surrogate. I
happen to know a nanny who is a surrogate, not for an intended charge, but she so wants to help people have lovely, wonderful families that she's nannying on the one hand and like pregnant with a surrogate child on the other to help another family. I know some nannies who are surrogates for their employers. For child number 2 or child number 3 in the family. That
is serious multitasking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so my contribution to a Mother's Day is just the story that we called one of our favorite restaurants that we've been doing a lot of takeout on the weekends from. Because we used to go there at least one Saturday or Sunday, and sometimes both. And it is Briggs in Cary. And we called them yesterday and ordered our food, and they say, okay, 10 minutes, no problem. And we called them today, and Cindy came up to me and said, are they back open again? And I said, why? She said, well, they said it would be 2 hours. And I checked their website, and not supposed to be open, and no, they're not open. It's Mother's Day. So their takeout backlog was 2 hours. So awesome. I imagine that happening all over town. And so we'll be cooking in tonight because
I have my food in the Instant Pot.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a video call with my mom after this.
Yeah. Otherwise, we put our order in at noon and pick it up at 5:00. So, let's get to the topic of the show. I forget what that was. Could anybody remind me? Oh yes. Biden ? #me too. ! And you were saying you haven't been following the politics, the Biden politics all that much?
Not particularly in detail. I know that Biden has been accused of sexual assault, and it was some number of years ago, and that is a concern of the Democrats, and I agree it should be a concern of the Democrats. I mean, the Democratic benches ought to be deep enough that we should be able to run, I'm not a Democrat, I'm registered unaffiliated. They should be able to run a candidate who has good politics and experience and also no sexual assault, because sexual assault, legal or not in the past, whatever, condoned by society or not in the past, whatever, it's still rude. Like, it was rude back then. It's still rude. Like, we shouldn't have anybody with that sort of stuff in their history.
Yeah, and that's the Me Too question mark part. So I'll go through the story a little bit, and I've got some tape to play that will help bring things out. Until recently, most of the complaints about Biden were that he was a little too touchy-feely.
He definitely does appear to be very touchy-feely.
Yeah, and women complained about that, but it wasn't assault. And then earlier this year, one woman, her name is Tara Reid, was on a podcast, and she told the host of the podcast about a very serious sexual assault. It wasn't rape, but it was much more serious than just being touchy-feely. And let's see, not quite where I wanted to go here. Let's try getting back to Skype. Okay, I'll get that up in just a second. The podcast was hosted by a woman named Katie Halper, and she's Katie Halper has got some journalism and publicity cred. She's been a stand-up comic, a film producer. She's been a writer, published in. I'm getting texts. Old ancient texts are coming through for some reason on this computer, and I'm not sure why. She's been published in some big time publications, and now she's also a podcaster. Isn't everybody? It's like when you meet somebody on the street for the first time. Well, you can't do that anymore. But when you meet someone for the first time, introduce yourself and say, "Oh, what podcast do you do?"
Ain't that the truth?
Everybody does a podcast. So that's where Tara Reid first told her story, and now I will try to get that up on the monitor and in the player where I want to play it. And this is a little clip from that show where she is telling what happened.
He just said, "Hey, come here, Tara," and then I handed him the thing, and he greeted me. He remembered my name, and then we were alone, and it was the strangest thing. There was no exchange really. He just had me up against the wall, and I was wearing a skirt and a business skirt, but I wasn't wearing stockings. It was kind of a hot day that day, and I was wearing heels. And I remember my legs had been hurting from the marble, of the Capitol, walking. And so I remember that kind of stuff. I remember that, and it was kind of an unusually warm day. And I remember I was wearing a blouse, and he just had me up against the wall, and the wall was cold. And I remember it happened all at once. The gym bag, I don't know where it went. I handed it to him, it was gone. And then his hands were on me and underneath my clothes. And, and then he went down my skirt, but then up inside it. And he penetrated me with his fingers, whatever. And he was kissing me at the same time, and he was saying something to me. He said several things, and I can't remember everything he said. I remember a couple of things. I remember him saying first, before, as he was doing it, "Do you want to go somewhere else?" And then him saying to me, when I pulled away, he got finished doing what he was doing, and I kind of was pulled back, and he said, "Come on, man, I heard you liked me." And it's that phrase stayed with me because I kept thinking what I might have said, and I can't remember exactly if he said I thought or if I heard, but it's like he implied that I had done this, I don't know. And for me, it was like everything shattered in that moment, because I knew we were alone. It was over, right? He wasn't trying to do anything more, but I looked up to him. He was my father's age. He was this champion of women's rights in my eyes, and I couldn't believe it was happening. It seemed surreal. And I just felt sick because when he pulled back, he looked annoyed and he looked, and he said something else to me that I don't want to say. And then he said, I must have looked shocked, and he grabbed me by the shoulders. I don't know how I looked, but I must have looked something, because he grabbed me by the shoulders and he said, "You're okay. You're fine. You're okay. You're fine." And then he walked away and he went on with his day. And what I remember next is being in the Russell building, like where the big windows are, and the stairs by myself. And my body, I was shaking everywhere because it was cold all of a sudden. And I don't know, I felt like I was shaking just everywhere. And I was trying to grasp what had just happened and what I should do or what I should say.
So I didn't have your picture on the screen. I couldn't see your reaction when you listened to that. Tell me about your reaction to just hearing that story.
I've lived parts of that experience in many different ways. Never had the entire experience together, but the "I heard you liked me," like I've been the victim of that. There's a lot of people like, "Hey, she really likes you. You need to make a move." Like, I get what's going on in guy circles. I was a tomboy. I used to be in the locker room. Like, I heard it. That kind of crap needs to stop. Like, I promise you, world, if a woman likes somebody, and if that somebody that the woman likes doesn't make a move soon enough, that woman will make the move. There is no need. Nobody needs to hype anybody up. We women are just as capable of being very, very aggressive as guys are. We'll pin a dude up against a wall, if we get frustrated enough and don't have any manners. But the point is, like, I've heard that like, you got to make a move, man. You got to make a move. She likes you. She's waiting for you. She's into you. And I, as the token woman allowed in the guy space, I'm always going like, nah, man. You wouldn't have any question if she liked you.
Yeah. And if you're going to make a move, that's not the move.
No. I mean, if you have to be hyped up into making a move, you probably shouldn't make a move anyway, because you probably have no idea what move is appropriate to make. Just use your words and be like, "Hey, I heard you liked me. So, what's the next step?" It's fine. We love it. It's great. It's perfect. You sound like a confident individual who also wants to be collaborative, and relationships are collaborative. Yeah. I mean, if you just want sex, like, there are people who will take your money and give you sex. There's no reason to go through all this, like, complicated nonsense.
So this episode was 27 years ago that she's describing. Now, she's describing it in March, I think. But she's describing something that happened 27 years ago. Another part of me, too, is, well, why didn't you do something about it then?
Because you freeze. Yeah. Because it's a stress response. Yeah. Like, it's genetic. It's how your body reacts to cortisol and adrenaline. And some people fight. I'm a fighter. I would eject somebody. Some people flee. And if you cannot physically flee the situation, then you freeze. And some people just freeze. They don't even flee. And so, like, there's either you deck them or you freeze. That's the options, especially if you're pinned up against the wall, which, by the way, I related to that, too. I've been pinned up against a thing. Luckily, it was in a kitchen, and it was with cabinets, and there was a knife block within easy reaching range. And so as I'm being pinned up there, I'm reaching for the butcher knife. Like, dude would have lost his life if the dog hadn't come and rescued me. The dog came and just basically, like, took its paw and went whack right in the guy's crotch. The guy doubled over, and I left the situation. But, like,
nice dog.
It was brilliant dog.
Yeah.
Like, love that dog.
Well, I've got a little bit of her reaction. The podcast that she was on ran for an hour. She was the only guest, and they talked about this exclusively. And she spends a lot of time talking about, and the host asked several times to get the story out, because she knew that there's a lot of things that go on behind the emotions and behind the stories of a woman who has been attacked like that. So she gave them plenty of opportunity. I'm just going to play one little bit of it here, and so this is a little bit of that story.
There's sexual harassment that you witness and experience, or you go through protocol. Then nothing happens. Then you have the incident in the alcove with Biden. You tell your mom. She encourages you to file a police report. You say, no, but I will do something external about the harassment, not the assault.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
And I thought about trying to talk about it. I did. I tried. I just couldn't. I couldn't. Even now, like, it's so hard. And I don't. And I mean, I've worked as an advocate for domestic violence cases and help kids, and I help, whatever. But it's just, there was no framework back then. And
right.
To be really clear, my mom educated me after it happened that it was sexual assault. I felt like it was my fault, like that I didn't need to bring it on. And the reason after the whole serving the drinks thing happened, things got really tense for me. And it's like my supervisor kept finding fault with my work. Like all of a sudden I was doing things wrong all of a sudden. And then she took me aside and sent in an assistant and said, we want you to wear different clothes. You need to button up more. You need to wear longer skirts. Like, in other words, she said, don't look so sexy. She was like really blatant about it. And she goes, try not to be so noticed. You're too noticeable. The other person was more awkward about it. She was just like, it's not coming from me, but they're telling you to wear longer skirts and button up more. And you're a little too provocative,
right,
is the word to use. Right. Whatever. So, and I was like, oh, this is weird. So I told my mom that, and she goes, that's retaliation. They're trying to retaliate. You need to document everything. And my mom was very adamant. And I wasn't, and I was like, Mom, and my mom even said, you march in there and you tell them this is sexual harassment and you don't take it. I'm like, you don't march into Ted Kaufman's office and you don't do that. And I just wasn't comfortable. I said, I'll never be able to get a job on the Hill again. And it didn't matter because I couldn't anyway.
I saw you nodding that time.
Yeah. So policing women's clothing happens even outside of cases of, retribution for sexual harassment. But also, that's retaliation right there. There's no question. If her clothes weren't acceptable to start with, then they weren't acceptable to end with. And this is one where it's like, where were you, HR, at the beginning? And if her clothes were acceptable to start with, then her clothes are still acceptable.
Does she sound credible?
Yeah. Why wouldn't she?
Well, that's going to be a good question. And there are some things about her credibility that come into play later on, and we'll look at some of that. This isn't going to be an investigation of her story entirely. I want to go a little bit different direction, but just as I was listening to her story, listening to that podcast, and I had already been exposed to some of the other things that have been going around, because when you're dealing with someone who's running for president, this is a shitstorm. And so I've been exposed to a fair amount of that shitstorm on various media, but I hadn't heard her on that podcast until I went and looked it up and played it for myself all the way through the full hour. And I was going, well, she sure sounds credible to me. And some of that shitstorm didn't ring very true. I mean,
it's an experience I've lived in its own pieces. Thank God, never by a supervisor. But I had somebody stick their hands inside of my clothing and thus inside of my body when I was not at all attracted to them, because they thought I was, and they were bigger and stronger than me, and I was in a position where I could not physically flee the situation. I have had somebody back me up against a surface because they were attracted to me and they thought that I had been flirting with them, mistaking my interest in them as a person and my general niceness for which is just sad. I mean, what does that say about the number of people who've been nice to them in the past? Like, that's not a lot of people who've been nice to them in the past. If they're going to mistake that for sexual interest, like, they don't have a lot of experience with just having friends or people who care about them in a platonic manner. I've had experience with having my clothing policed by a supervisor. In my case, it was that I needed to wear more skirts and less pants. I have had like that happens in workplaces all the time. Because I'm a lady and therefore I should wear skirts because ladies wear skirts, you see.
That's what he said. That's not what was behind it. I've been a guy a little too long to know what was behind that.
Well, I just, I because of who I am and because of the personality type I have, which is that I will die on some hills and I know it and I'm good at those boundaries. I told him where he could shove that opinion about whether or not I could wear pants or skirts. And so we went on from there. But I've been in workplaces where I was pretty sure they were setting me up for something. So I have also done the documentation thing. I mean, these are all things that happen over the course of anybody's working life. And I will add, shouldn't. I'm just acknowledging that they do. Yeah. And it's just, it seems very credible. It also seems like something that could have been easily diffused. All Biden had to do was say, yeah, I did it. I was boneheaded. I was stupid back then. I have learned. I have changed. I have grown. I have personally offered an apology. It has been accepted. We have had that fence mended. And I'm now an advocate out here against that and trying to cut down on toxic masculinity and sexual harassment in the workplace in the future for everyone.
Well, that is a perfect segue because here is what he actually did say.
The former Senate aide accuses you of sexual assault. And please, to our viewers, please excuse the graphic nature of this, but I want to make sure that there is no question as to what we're talking about. She says in 1993, Mr. Vice President, that you pinned her against the wall and reached under her clothing and penetrated her with your fingers. Would you please go on the record with the American people? Did you sexually assault Tara Reade?
No, it is not true. I'm saying unequivocally, it never happened. And it didn't. It never happened.
Okay, so that is from Morning Joe, and that's Mika Brzezinski, who I've heard other shows say that she can be a pit bull on relationship issues like that. And then describe, listen to the podcast. I think it was one of the Pod Save America podcasts. They were listening to it before the Biden interview, and they're saying, well, Mika's probably going to tear him a new one. And then after they watched it, they said she was more restrained than they expected her to be.
I'm surprised at her restraint. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, I watched all of that interview, and I can't play all of it. Fair use wouldn't let me play all of it. I'm probably pushing the bounds with just how much we're playing. But as we do all the commentary on what we have heard, I think I can get away with it. Although YouTube will probably take this down anyway.
It kills his credibility for him to do that. She's lying. That's an old trope. We've heard it. It's played out. It's done. The lady doth protest too much. Like Shakespeare was over it. Yeah. It's just such an old trope. He would walk out of this with higher credibility if he leaned into it, admitted that it happened, said, oh, I didn't even notice I was pinning her up against the wall. I do recall that I kissed her and fondled her. It's just all we had to do. Because there were no criminal charges filed. And I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know about the statute of limitation against criminal charges, but it sounds to me like Tara Reade is not exactly going to go for criminal charges anyway. It sounds like something that can be cleared up and moved beyond and used to build a narrative of character, of mistakes made, lessons learned, and causes to be championed, instead of having to go with the lady doth protest too much. No, it never happened. Nothing at all like that. Never. I've never ever touched a woman without her screaming at me, yes, I want that. No, I've never done. Also, on another note, wouldn't you rather somebody be begging for you to touch them before you touch them? Doesn't that a bigger ego boost? Why are we even in a world where we're not even going for that ego boost? Yeah.
As I've grown up and had relationships, this would be back in my 30s and 40s. It was like, is this okay? Before I
It
took a
doesn't
step.
have to be, is this okay? Do you want this?
Yeah.
Do you want it? You sure you want it? You want it? You want it like this? You want it? You want this? This is what you want? Like, dude, that ego boost when somebody's like, yes! God damn it, give it to... Like,
Yeah.
you will never feel sexier. So why are we even in a world where we're not even doing that? Like, I don't understand. And the thing is, he wasn't some, 16-year-old kid. He was her dad's age. Like, he's old enough to know better.
Yep. So let me get this last Biden clip, and this is a little bit of him dodging some of Mika Brzezinski's questions.
So, for complete transparency, why not push for the release of any documents with Tara Reade's name on them, whether it's at the University of Delaware or the National Archives?
First of all, let's get this straight. There are no personnel documents. I mean, you can't do that. You wouldn't, for example, if you worked with me or I worked for you and you had my income tax returns, you had my whatever. They're private documents. They're not for they don't get put out in the public. So they're not part of the public record.
So
yeah, but they can be made part of the public record if everybody consents.
yeah. I think that the best answer he could have given to her was, yes, let's do that. Because she wasn't asking make every document public. She was saying, let's do a search for Tara Reade's name and find the documents that are there or are not there. And
to Monday morning quarterback, I don't like yes, let's do that either. I think to show growth and knowledge and whatever, if he's gonna follow my playbook on how to handle a crisis, he should have said, with Tara Reade's consent, I will do what I can. Because that shows that he's learned a damn thing about consent.
Yeah. Even if he wants to say it didn't happen, or I have no memory of anything like that happening, it is let's open up everything and find out. And to be taking any steps less than that sounds like he's covering up something. And he was just being another politician.
Well, he sounds like he's being a lawyer right now. And, I've had the good fortune of being raised by a lawyer, so I'm familiar with what happens when you go into lawyer mode. But it's not exactly good PR to go into lawyer mode.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like he's trying to explain the laws behind, certain employer required, confidentiality, and that's fine. You say that after you say, well, if I could, I'd be fully in favor of it. And then you say, however, these things stand in the way. Yeah, and then you explain the law.
And it turns out some of the things that he was asking, I think, the Senate documentarian to do, the Senate said, no, we can't do that. Sorry. All of that goes into deep state politics that, way beyond my ability to analyze. I was curious, and a friend sent me a link to this story to look at Tara Reade just a little bit more. And this is a reporter for Vox.com, which if you're a young person, Vox.com is a thing. If you're as old as me, Vox.com is a website blog that I'd never heard of before. I have heard of it now, but it's I have no idea what their credibility level is. Turns out it's high. They're maybe not quite the New York Times, but they're playing that ballpark. So this is called The Agonizing Story of Tara Reade, and it's way too long to read all the way through. It's written by Laura McGann. But basically what she says is that she has done a lot of interviews with Tara Reade. She was looking at a consistent story for a long time, and then the story changed. And Laura McGann, the reporter, went through a lot of interviews with a lot of people and came up with troubling inconsistencies. She wasn't looking, or at least as far as you can tell, everybody looks like they've got some credibility here. She wasn't looking to tear the story apart. The Tara Reade story, to some extent and not completely, tore itself apart. And that's where we end up with the Me Too. Time's up. Me Too. Justice Kavanaugh Okay, now I can't remember the woman that was charging him with
Dr. Blasey Ford.
Yeah. And that leaves everybody who recognizes that Joe Biden is going to be the nominee against Donald Trump, at least.
How did that happen?
Yeah.
How is that the best the Democratic Party can do?
Yeah.
How?
There's some more complications there because we haven't had the convention yet. Could be someone else. This could take him down. It's kind of hard to tell. But back when Kavanaugh was in his trials and we had very strong believe the woman, probably a lot of us said, well, that's got potential to come back and bite us in the ass. But we're going to say it now, believe the woman.
Do I believe the exact details that she is reporting? I know that time can make memories hazy. Do I believe that do I believe her report of being kissed? Yes, that's one of those details. You either were kissed or you weren't. And do I believe that his hands were groping her? Absolutely. And is that enough? Yeah, that's enough.
Yep. Here's before the interview, Biden released this text. He said that, while the details of these allegations of sexual harassment and sexual assault are complicated, two things are not complicated. One is that women deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, and when they step forward, they should be heard, not silenced. The second is that their stories should be subject to appropriate inquiry and scrutiny. That's not what we were saying during Ford v. Kavanaugh.
I feel like she was subject to plenty of appropriate scrutiny and inquiry.
Yeah, she was, but we weren't saying that she should have been. We were saying that we should believe her. I know the resolution that I arrived at personally when I was listening to all that and realizing that women can be vindictive. It's possible. You're human beings.
No, sure. Any person can.
Women can lie. Women can take advantage of this kind of a situation and use it and weaponize it, just the way men can. So what I thought was, well, for most of our history, most of our modern history, most of my life, pretty much all of my life, we've been at they need to be subject to appropriate inquiry and scrutiny in a he said, she said, where all the inquiry and scrutiny is going to not bring you up very much because no one saw it happen. Only the two people who were there.
So I look at that in a different way. Again, I look at things through the three gates of speech. Is it kind? Is it necessary? Is it true? The inquiry and scrutiny, I know you're focusing on, is it true? What I'm focusing on is also, is it necessary? Like, what is the purpose of speaking about this now? Why is it necessary now? That's where my inquiry and scrutiny goes. Now, I understand why Dr. Blasey Ford felt that it was necessary to bring up Kavanaugh then, because she explained it. That was a question that was asked, and that was an answer she gave. She thought it was something that, the Senate needed to know about the character of a potential Supreme Court justice. And I think that his reaction to those allegations were very important, that the Senate needed to know about, a potential Supreme Court justice. But, how does somebody handle stress? Not very well, that man. Not very well. With Biden, I haven't heard anybody, and maybe it's just my media diet. I'm aware that I cannot eat all the media in the world all the time. So I do have to go on a media diet. Why now? Is it just because somebody finally decided to ask now? Is it because she wants to heal and move past this trauma that has been in her life, and her therapist thinks that now is a good time to talk about it because she's done all the foundational work to be able to now take this on? Like, why now?
Yeah, after 27 years, what what set this timing, and
because she is painting a target on her back, and I'm not saying that it shouldn't be discussed ever. I want to make that clear. I think these things should be discussed. The light of day should be shown on them, absolutely, but not at a time where it's going to re-traumatize you or make you a victim of bigger and worse things. I want you safe victims. I want victims of sexual assault to be safe and safe from retribution. And she is painting a big old target on her back right now. So why now?
Yeah.
Is she ready for this? I mean, she didn't communicate any of that.
Yeah, and I haven't dug into the story very much deeper than what I've talked about so far. There is, and of course, I mean, there's tons of speculation, because in the absence of certain knowledge, speculation fills that vacuum really fast. She has talked about, and one of the things that makes this story, gives it less credibility, is that she's talked about flirtation and discomfort and the touchy-feely part of Biden before. She's been part of the group that talked about that before. This just came up recently, and what's happened recently? Biden has become a vice president or a presidential nominee. He's been a presidential nominee before, and she didn't bring it up. What people have noted was that she was a Bernie Sanders supporter. How strong? I don't know.
I don't want to say that if we looked in Bernie Sanders' skeletons in the closet, we might find him touchy-feely too, because, I mean, even his public persona is a little bit touchy-feely now, so.
Well, no one has come up with a complaint so far. But she was among a group of women that noted that, Biden had, issues, none at this level, but something to pay attention to. So now this comes up, the more serious issue, and it's a specific spot in a specific campaign. It's easy to say, well, I can make that connection. Don't know for sure.
I mean, I'm hoping for her sake it's because her therapist has said that she's finally ready to revisit all the consequences that are going to come of making this a conversation. That would be the best case scenario here.
Yeah, and I've got no resolution. I don't know what to say about it. I certainly don't have any knowledge. And I haven't read everything that's been published about it, and plenty has been published about it. There's lots out there. The second half of my resolution about realizing that it's not possible to investigate and come up to a certain conclusion when not necessarily famous women, not necessarily women dealing at this level of notoriety, of newsworthiness, just ordinary women, you and any other woman who's been subject to this, who wants to file a complaint, who wants to have someone arrested. It's your word against his, and that usually ends up with nothing happens to him. So what I was thinking of at that point was, well, we've been up to this point where you can't investigate. There's nothing to investigate. It's one word against another, and nothing happens. There will be times when a woman will make that complaint, and she'll be wrong. She'll be lying or vindictive, or for some reason she'll be making that complaint falsely.
Lacrosse case.
Yeah. If we look at it across the totality of recent history and all of those complaints, if we were to believe the woman, yes, there will be some times when the man is falsely accused. Where will the average of justice be?
Well, that's the point of the criminal justice system, is it not? That's where the jury of your peers is supposed to be fair.
Yeah.
I mean, I get that we're talking about this as the court of public opinion, but I think that as the court of public opinion, we should support the woman and then leave legal judgments to the legal system.
The legal system, at least so far, has, if you've gotten that far, is, well, not enough evidence to convict him. And I don't know how to change that. I
mean, the only way to change it, and I have been yelled at by, all the rape crisis support centers and stuff for saying it is, it should be non-optional to get a rape kit. If you're going to make the complaint, you should get that evidence. I know you don't want anybody else touching you there. You feel very violated. I had a friend who was raped, and I immediately came to her side, and we had this argument. And I, in what is considered a worst practice, basically tucked her up under my arm like a football and drove her ass to the hospital and had them do a rape kit. Which, yes, it increased the trauma she experienced, but also she had evidence and was able to go after the guy who raped her, and they had a conviction. And now looking back on it 20, 30 years later, she appreciates that I've done that, even if at the time it wasn't what she wanted.
Yeah.
And so I still stand by my actions then, and I think that that's the way you go. Rape kits always, every time.
That puts the onus of doing the right things on the woman, which is, I guess, can we say that it is an unfortunate reality?
Any victim of any kind of assault, sexual or otherwise, is the one who has to seek medical treatment. The assailant is not going to seek the medical treatment for them.
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody came up to you and just took a baseball bat and broke your arm, then they're going to walk away and you have to get yourself to the hospital to get a cast. That's how assault works.
Yeah. So the evidence that gets talked about these days is contemporaneous notes, discussions with trusted people, third parties.
Or deep tissue photographs that show that the penetration was non-consensual. I mean, you hold your pelvis at a slightly different, not always. I will add that there's all kinds of sexual, kinks and fun little, but in a purely vanilla kind of sexual context, you will hold the woman will hold their pelvis at a particular angle to make penetration easier if it is consensual than a woman will hold their pelvis if the penetration is non-consensual. And in that case, they can do bruise photographs, which will show that this particular angle was when one holds one pelvis non-consensually. Now, again, this can be abused by people in particular kinks who, rape fantasy is their thing, or that's their thing, and then they can go and be like, well, but that's where within the kink, it is risk-aware consent, because that's one of the risks you're aware of, is that the activity you are performing could be lied about and used against you. But again, that was one of the pieces of evidence she had, aside from the fact that he left epithelials on her skin and stuff, which again they had. I mean, there was no question that he was involved in a sexual encounter with her, and she was very adamant about she intended to be a virgin until marriage, and she was clearly not married, and that swayed a DA, and he just pled out.
Wow. So I'm feeling kind of overwhelmed and out of my element in this discussion, even though I started the discussion. But that's where that's what the territory that I wanted to cover. What in reality, when we get past all the things that would be great if we could have them, and we're not going to get there, at least not now. And what things do women have to be able to do if we're going to change a little bit of society so that they're not always the prey?
The whole nonsense about what were you wearing, and she was explaining her clothes. That was not necessary, honey. What you were wearing does not matter. If you could, I will tell you this, and any woman will tell you this, and the you I'm telling is men. Guys will think you're sexy in a potato sack. It just, it's, when they want to have sex with you, they want to have sex with you. Clothes don't matter at all. If clothes mattered at all, then there would be no such thing as pajamas or old granny flannel nightgowns. It would only be lingerie. And furthermore, if clothes mattered at all, guys would be wearing sexier clothes too. Because let's be real, the attraction goes both ways, and those cargo shorts just ain't cutting it, honey.
That explains a lot about my life. We'll have to check with Cindy to see what attracted her, because it wasn't my wardrobe.
But that's like, the clothes thing needs to be gone. Okay? Somebody needs to be able to walk completely butt naked across an open field, and the only thing that should happen to them is that they should get a call for streaking. They should not be assaulted. If you pass out at a party, that's rude. First of all, if you drink so much or do drugs so much that you pass out at a party, that is rude. But the penalty for rudeness is not rape or sexual assault. As we can see by the fact that dudes pass out at parties and they're not raped or sexually assaulted, the penalty for rudeness like that is that you get nasty things written in Sharpie across your forehead, and then you get to sleep safely until the morning when people tease you about it. That's what happens when you're rude. The flirtation, the penalty for flirtation should be a conversation to make sure everybody's on the same page. This is more than just women. This is just society in general. And I would also like to see an end to this. And I do this in my volunteer work on the side. So sorry for hogging the mic. The idea that consent is some sort of litigious thing, and you have to have a conversation where you're a supplicant, or it's some sort of contract that you need signed. I heretofore, consent to this following activities, 1, 2, 3, 4, subsection D, sign here, please, and I want to get it on videotape. Consent, if you pick up any romance novel at all and flip to any page at all in the romance novel, you will see consent done sexily. And that is the consent that we want. We want sexy, non-mood killing consent. And there is a whole industry out there providing guidebooks that nobody who needs to read them is reading. Your library has them. When their libraries are open after this pandemic calms down a little bit, go pick one up. Nobody's going to judge you. Give it a read. Read it like a textbook. See if you can get some hints from there. Because even the bodice rippers have consent built in.
I think most of us get our clues on how these things are supposed to work from a very unhelpful source, watching TV and movies.
Oh Lord, if you use that as a formula, there is a reason you are not having success. No does not mean try harder, but it does for a movie, because that sells the movies to the studios who then produce it to sell to consumers. The concept of no means try harder is to sell and get your money as a consumer, not because it is such a fantastic, far out, unrealistic idea, not because it should be taken as an instruction manual. The idea that you don't need to talk about things and that people just fall into bed, they do fall into bed, but then there are consequences afterwards. I mean, is that what you really want? There is a better world out there, and it is way, way more fun.
So I'm thinking, I'm 70. I went through this learning phase, and the first time, the initially learning phase, in the late 50s, early 60s. Things have changed since then, but I don't think they've gotten better. Young men and young women are still getting the bad messages from the media, and they're probably getting messages from education, although that's fraught, because there's parents who say, I want to be able to teach my kids what I want to teach them. I don't want the school teaching them anything. Well, what are you teaching them? Nothing. And that's the way I like it. Let them learn the way I did.
I tell this lovely story, and I know it's not Father's Day, but I'm gonna put my dad on blast for doing a good thing. When I was coming into my sexuality, I was starting to like boys, and I was discovering that certain kind of touches felt good, and all the things that one does when they're sort of blossoming into their adult sexual self. My dad came in and we had that awkward talk where he sat me down and he's like, let's talk about the birds and the bees. And of course, I had already read a medical textbook aimed at children on the topic. And I was like, I'm familiar with puberty. I know how the body changes. Like, I'm aware of what guys go through too. That's, we don't have to do this, Dad. My dad was like, that's not what I'm talking about. He said, and the first thing he started with was the saying, orgasms feel good. And I was like, whoa, okay.
That wasn't
I don't
in the
know
book.
where this is going.
Yeah, that wasn't in the book I read.
Yeah, and he was like, they feel good. You're going to want to have them. You're going to want to have a lot of them. Well, let me go over a list of other strategies to get you orgasms that reduce risks of sexually transmitted diseases, that reduce risks of pregnancy. That he was like, because penis and vagina penetration isn't the only thing out there. Let's talk about like all of these different, sexual activities and break them down by risk category. And we must have gone through like, I want to say 11 different strategies for both giving and receiving orgasms and ranked them in order of which was safest. And then he looked at me and he goes, so as a family, value, we would prefer if you did not, and then listed a bunch of them. And he said, however, that leaves those ones that you're free to do. So go forth and make good choices. And that really helped. I mean, it really helped in my teen years. It did. Because, I went to the parties where, there was the pressure to do the things. And I was like, no, not that. I'm not ready for that. However, I would like to offer this in trade because I still kind of like you and I still kind of want to, have a happy time here. And that worked out just brilliantly for me. And it also led to me, as an older and older adult, when somebody came up and sort of put their hands on me, I was like, listen, I have had success in high school talking about sex in the moment when the heat is up, right? So I know the heat is up for you right now, and I understand that I can have this conversation, and generally I'm not going to die, which I would like to add, circling back, when Tara Reid was talking about the experience when she pulled away, she was relaying it very credibly, but she was relaying it from her perspective. And what I heard there was, number one, I heard that the reality was probably that Biden was feeling embarrassed. The reaction she described sounded like he was feeling very, very embarrassed, especially with the you're fine, but still looking annoyed. That's embarrassment. But how a woman interprets that is, oh my God, he's going to fucking kill me. There's your explicit feature. He's going to kill me. He's looking annoyed. I told him no. He's going to wrap his big hands around my tiny neck and he's going to choke the life out of me right now because he can, because he's bigger than me. So if you listen to it, you will hear her fear, but you will simultaneously hear his embarrassment and how he's trying to, by her own reporting, how he's trying to calm her because he probably picked up on the fact that she is now a scared bunny, terrified. But again, this is why a lot of people don't in that moment react. They don't say no, they let it happen because you're worried about being physically damaged in a much bigger way. You're doing a cost-benefit analysis here. Like, on the one hand, there's rape, which involves damage to these following organs in this small area. And, a little bit of emotional damage and psychological damage because I'll feel unsafe about my body. But on the other hand, there's death, which is unrecoverable. Which of these is the better option right now? And we need to empower a third option, which is that you can just be like, nah, honey, and have you live.
Yeah. And if you get raped anyway, understanding what you can do about it afterwards.
And that it's completely and totally not your fault.
Yeah. Yeah, because she talked about that too. She did I felt like it was my fault.
Yeah, that I feel is a sign of the times. And I hope we've changed from that. That is one of the things that I've seen hopefully gaining traction is the idea that it takes two to tango, not one to tango, and it can't be your fault if you're one of two. Well, it can be half your fault if you're one of two. It can't be all the way your fault.
I would love to see that being the message that young women were getting today, and I'm sure many are, but I think still way too many are not.
And the only way it's your fault is if you say yes, when you secretly meant no, in which case you are victimizing yourself, and that is a no-no. Ethically, that's a no-no. You are not allowed to victimize yourself.
So to bring this to a useful place, another useful place. Everything's been very useful. To another useful and quite immediate place. We don't have to decide if we're going to vote for Biden or not today. And if by some miracle he gets replaced by a much better candidate, and he wasn't my pick. I didn't vote for him in the primary. I voted for Warren. If he is somehow replaced by a more viable candidate, a better choice, and I'm still back at the vote blue no matter who. I'll vote for Biden. I'll still vote for Biden if he shows up there.
Realistically, Biden and Trump are now 1-for-1 on groping a woman in a skirt. And kissing them simultaneously. We know this about Trump. That just makes them equals.
Yeah. Well, people are saying that Trump has been accused many, many more times of more heinous activities. Biden
certainly.
So they're not even. And that will be interesting to see how it plays out in the campaign. But if nothing happens and we end up with Biden as the nominee, Trump as the nominee, I guess where it falls for me is as much as I don't like the way we got there and where things stand right now, and am suspicious of the activity to tear down Tara Reid and anyone else who accuses him, because we got to prop up Biden. We got to make sure he wins this election. We do need to make sure he wins this election, and then we need to make sure that what he stands for gets overwritten quickly in administration. And I guess who he selects as vice president will have a significant effect on that.
I am ready for Congress to once again retain its crown as a co-equal, or replace its crown as a co-equal form of government, a co-equal branch of government, rather than what they've been doing presently, which does not seem co-equal.
Yeah.
If Congress being stronger means the presidency becomes weaker, I'm okay with that, because I'm in this a little bit of an originalist. The original Constitution did want all three branches of government to be co-equal.
Yep.
And
I don't know that the Democrats will be willing to do that any more than the Republicans are willing to do that, but we will see. And another area where the consequences of this election are not just the presidential campaign, it's the Senate. Keeping the House and then regaining the Senate. And like you, I'm registered independent, unaffiliated. I vote Democratic, the Democratic ticket exclusively unless there's a strategic reason to vote Republican in a primary.
I voted Republican in the most previous primary. I voted for Bill Weld because I would honestly, in a worst case scenario, prefer him to Trump as president.
Yeah. And I just didn't want to see Trump get, to reduce whatever momentum he had. And it, my one vote didn't do very much about that, but I think I voted for John Kasich, not because I liked Kasich at all, but he looked like he was going to be one of the more serious competitors to Trump, and could do a little bit more damage to Trump's steamrolling North Carolina. It didn't really. I think Kasich came in second, but it was a very distant second in our primary. So my strategy, yeah.
I mean, I knew that my one little bitty individual vote in Orange County, North Carolina, where I live, was not going to in any way sway the landslide of blue votes for the Democratic nominee who was picked by us. So I figured, well, I will do some good with it.
Yeah. So what do you think about, is it hold your nose, vote for Biden? Or are you going to
It's been hold my nose, vote for the Democrat for a while for me. Nobody's progressive enough, really, that I've been happy with.
So would you have been a Bernie fan this election?
I would you have been a Bernie fan this election?
Or would you have been a Trump fan?
I would you have been a Trump fan this election? I would you have been a Trump fan this election? I would you have been a Trump fan this election? I would you have been a Trump fan this election? I would you have been a Trump fan this election? I would you have been a Trump fan this election? I would you have been a Trump fan this election? I would you have been a Trump fan this election? I would you have been a Trump fan this election? I would you have been a Trump fan this election? I would you have been a Trump fan this election? I would you have been a Trump fan this election? I would you have been a Trump fan this election? I would you have been a Trump fan this election? I would you have been a Trump fan this election? I would you have been a Trump fan this election? I would you have been a Trump fan this election? I would you have been a Trump fan this election? I would you have been a Trump fan this election?
You mentioned you think he was a little creepy now and then.
Yeah, no, and that has nothing to do with it, really. I definitely would not go to Bernie's house for a dinner party. But, I don't want a president that I can have a beer with. I want a president who can run a country. I didn't see enough well-roundedness from Bernie in an executive position functioning kind of role. Would I have liked him? I'm also with you, vote blue, no matter who. I think that he really belongs in a legislative position. His ideas are great. The legislature is the powerhouse to make them happen. I would like to see him have a little more power and sway there. I think that would be him sliding brilliantly into the star he was meant to be for America. I do agree with you. I think Warren has the executive chops to be the policy wonk to run the country. She's got some good ideas, and the legislature is certainly a decent enough fit for her, but that woman can get into the weeds on things in a way that you want a boss to get into the weeds on things. Dot all those I's, cross all those T's, make sure there are no unintended consequences of things when you are executing them, when you are bringing them to fruition. And that's where Warren really, really shines. And unfortunately, it did not help her PR game, because she couldn't give a fortune cookie answer. You stuck a mic in front of her and she started going through every single clause of the thing to point out whether it was good or bad or going to be problematic, which is brilliant. That's what I want in a president. And to that end, Pete Buttigieg, love him or hate him, also had those chops. A little less experience, but he had those same chops.
Yeah. I think my not exactly dream ticket, because I don't dream this way, but sort of a fantasy potential ticket would have been Warren Buttigieg.
I mean, that's executive experience. I'm Bloomberg. I could not, because of stop and frisk. I just couldn't. He lost me there. If he thought that was a good policy, it just wasn't. And he was the one who, it just, no, I'm sorry. That and throwing away a lot of his own money on this sort of none of those seem like good ideas. Why do I want somebody who has a track record of bad ideas like that running a country?
Yeah, and just super rich guy running in to change things midstream.
I cannot say that I have been very excited about anything coming out of New York City in a while. New York City seems to be the proving ground for really bad ideas and really bad management. I just don't love it. I haven't loved many of the mayors and governors of New York for a while. They're just not, whatever is happening there, fix it, please.
So what would you feel if somehow Biden did not become the nominee, and it wasn't because he got sick, it wasn't because he caught COVID-19 and either got too sick to run or died, or just from being old? What would you think if however they did it, through shenanigans or some legitimate process, he got replaced?
It is what it is. It's not my party, so beggars can't be choosers, If I wanted to have a say, I should have registered. I can't.
What ballot did you take during the primary? Well, you took
the Republican
in this primary, yeah.
Yeah.
And okay, so this one,
I'm unaffiliated, so I.
Yeah, you folks who are registered Republican or Democrat, a lot of people don't realize that in a primary, if you're registered unaffiliated, you can choose at the voting booth. When you're going in to vote, you can select whether you want a Republican or Democrat ballot.
Democrat, or what was the other one that was offered this year? It wasn't Libertarian. I don't think they had enough people to make a ballot. There was a third option this year. I can't remember who it was. It wasn't the Green Party.
I think that would have to be district and precinct by precinct, because I don't remember having a different option.
Okay. I'm saying in Chapel Hill, they gave me 3 choices, and the woman in line in front of me she expected a primary for the Green Party, and she got turned away, and they just simply said, nobody's running opposed, and she was both bummed and excited about that. Yeah. So that's why I know it wasn't the Green Party, and I know it wasn't Libertarian because I would have heard about it from my Libertarian friends. I can't remember what the other party was that was running a primary in my particular district. But yes, you get to choose, and choosing doesn't change your affiliation. I'm still registered unaffiliated. You just get to pick which ballot you want to vote in the primary of.
Yeah, and in any given primary, either Democrat or Republican or third party could decide that unaffiliated voters cannot take their ballot. But they never do. I don't know why. They never do, because I suppose it's one of those things that's just not that big enough a deal.
I mean, there's whole dozens of us.
Well, actually, unaffiliated is, I think, it's not quite parity between Republican, Democrat, and unaffiliated, but it's close. And I'm not sure. We may be bigger than Republican.
Let me restate that. In Orange County, there's whole dozens of us.
That could be.
Everybody here bleeds blue, except for the few proud Republicans, bless their hearts, being a little bit counterculture. But so I have long ago, for self-care, released the emotional amount that I am going to spend on a party that I won't even join. They're going to do what they're going to do, and I just accept that is what happens when people make decisions that I don't get to have an input in. And I can choose to have an input by changing my registration, so it's all on me. And the fact that I have abstained from that process means that I get to receive from on high. And so I'm just going to roll with the punches.
Well, now you have the opportunity as a respected podcast pundit to look at it from the journalistic point of view and analyze.
It depends on who they find. that would be the punditry. It depends on who they find. If they replace Biden, you better do it according to your own rules, your own parliamentary rules, because we're not having some backroom shenanigans. I'm not here for that. Full transparency is very important to me. And then B, or two, you better pick somebody from the Democratic bench who's actually qualified and who meets everything, all the requirements and can do the job, et cetera, et cetera. It reminds me of when Al Franken was being removed for his shenanigans. There was all this, all this punditry, should Franken stay? Should Franken go? It was Franken, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Should Franken stay? Should Franken go? People were up in arms. Keep Franken. And then and then this one woman, and I wish I could remember who it was and what radio show it was on, because I would love to go back and find that quote. But it was like words of wisdom. And when you hear them, it's true. She said, I would be seriously upset if within the Democratic Party, there wasn't somebody just as good as Franken who didn't have this in their past. I would like to think the Democratic bench is deeper than just Franken. And I went, whoa.
That's a good point. And it's one that I'd never considered. I'm trying very hard not to be one of those people that says, I think he got shafted, because I can't tell. From what I've seen, the picture where he's doing like this, I guess it was a female reporter, and I think she was asleep, and he's staging a picture while he's going to grope her, but he doesn't really do it. That didn't hit me as anything more than being childish.
There's a lot of immaturity in the world. There's just a lot of immaturity in the world. And would I like to live in a world where none of this crap happened? Yes, absolutely would love to live in a world where none of this crap happened. However, I do think it's important that anybody who has ever been immature in their life, which would be everybody, have a game plan for what happens when something you did, especially now in the internet age where nothing ever disappears, have a game plan for what happens when something that you did in the past catches up with you in the present, and you're being asked to, as a present person, account for past behavior. Yeah. And the game plan of denial is not the game plan we're going to go with.
I've got sort of a prediction about how the world will change a little bit, because everyone is, every young person has got stuff out there that they can't take back. And that is that I don't know if this is going to come true, but my prediction is that we'll become more tolerant of that. Yeah, you did it. Who cares?
I think we'll become qualified more tolerant of that, meaning not like we're like, whatevs, we don't care, but more like, hey, how has this helped you grow and change as a person to now have this shoved under your nose? You know, and then if that answer is acceptable, which that's where I am personally right now, if that answer is acceptable, then, you know, okay, this was part of your learning process, because we have all made somebody mad, made somebody feel uncomfortable, said some things we shouldn't have said, been intolerant when we should have been tolerant in our past. And the fact that we did that, you know, usually has led us to change and go, oh, that slipped out. Now I'm aware that I have that bias. I'm going to work on that bias right now, but you can't take back that it slipped out. But if it didn't slip out, you would have never become self-aware.
Yeah. Well, I think if my prediction comes true, it will happen when many more years are going to have to go by, because the people who then have the power to decide whether it's going to be okay or not will all have this stuff in their past. It's not going to be the current regime saying, yeah, it's, you know, we've been a little bit too hard on pulling up stuff from people's past and using it against them. No, the current folks, they're going to keep on doing that. It's when everybody is at that playing field levels out and everyone has that crap in their past that is out there on the internet they can't take back. Then they're going to say...
I highly recommend everybody have opposition research done against them right now. Just know what it is that's in your past that's going to be used against you to, like, take you down when you're at the height of anything. Yeah. Because guaranteed, we all have it. Every single one of us has something.
Yeah, and we're telling kids, you know, watch out for what this stuff you're putting on Instagram and Facebook and, you know, wherever, and they're not watching out. They're still putting the crap up there.
As a person who's thought long and hard about this, I own my past as my past, and I do not own it as my present. And I'm more than happy to talk people through how I've grown and changed based on mistakes I've made in my past that they may be publicly able to find. You know, the things that I've done to try and make amends once I've realized how truly wrong I was. You know, I will absolutely take ownership of the fact that sometimes it took me a very long time to realize that I was so wrong. But I did get there in the end, and I tried to go back where it was kind and necessary to make amends, where it wouldn't have made life worse for somebody I'd accidentally wronged in the past to simply even bring it up again, because that seems very selfish. You know, I've put out feelers, and I've tried to make amends with all the people that I have wronged, and I think that that's the game plan we're looking at, I hope.
Yeah, most of my transgressions are buried in police reports and that are all on paper and have never been digitized. One of the good things about being this old is that what you did when you were a kid, that stays when you were a kid, because no one can find out. However, I've gone through AA and have done the step of making amends, and that was painful.
I highly recommend that everybody either have experienced a 12-step program or be very closely affiliated with somebody who's experienced a 12-step program, because that really helped. I went through it, I went through Alateen because I was related to an active alcoholic at the time. And again, it's the same 12 steps. You've got the amends process, and that really helped give me another way to be a human being, and a human being of character.
Yeah. So, one last thing before we close the show. Nothing to do with anything we talked about so far. Going back to a couple of previous shows. I finished the last season that's on Netflix of The Good Place.
It's a good show.
I had like 2 episodes to go, and I guess I have discovered it is an NBC show because there's a current season, and I have not followed the current season. I'll wait until it pops up on Netflix, and I'll.
The current season has the entire show finale. And
this is it. It's done. This is
yeah. And the finale is it actually wraps everything up, which I cannot say for some shows, especially Lost, from which The Good Place takes its lessons on how to leave episodes on a cliffhanger. But yeah, it wraps things up, and in a way that left me feeling satisfied.
They do good cliffhangers. Their cliffhangers have drawn me into just one more. Plus, it's a 20-minute show.
Yeah.
Or 22-minute show. It's not you're not in for another hour. I have heard somebody describe what to do about cliffhangers. It takes a lot of internal fortitude to be able to do this.
I don't have it. I don't have it.
It is. Go ahead and watch the next episode, because they'll resolve the cliffhanger in the first 5 minutes and then stop. Yeah,
that's where I can't. I don't have it.
Yep.
I am at least self-aware on that one. I have to set a timer on the TV, and the TV turns itself off, and then that is that provides me enough of a break. It interrupts my process enough that I don't then go up and turn the TV back on. I can walk away.
Okay. So I've dug out some old stuff from we still get DVDs from Netflix, if I remember to send them back in. That's where we started, and we kept on doing that. I don't like very many movies. There's so many made. There are probably thousands of movies I would love to watch, but there's no way to tell. But whenever I just go for them at random, it's like, no, I don't like that. So I tried for some classics just because they're classics, and whether or not I like them, I should at least have seen them. And the last one I watched was The Manchurian Candidate.
Was it the original Manchurian Candidate or the new Manchurian Candidate?
That was the one produced in the 50s.
Oh, yeah. So I belong to a book club. We're a movie book club, and we read books that were turned into movies, and then we get together and we watch the movies and don't really talk about the books at all. It is the exact kind of book club everybody would love to be in, and we eat snacks while we watch the movies. But we did Manchurian Candidate, and we did a double feature of the old and the new.
I didn't even know there was a new one.
Yeah, it's got Denzel Washington in it.
Okay. Maybe I should watch that and see, because the old one...
They switched it to China rather than Russia as the country trying to, override things in the U.S. It was very interesting.
Yeah. Something has happened that I can't explain very well. And as a person who grew up in my entire career has been in media and making media, I really should have a better handle on this. But I was going to take a film history class the last semester that I was in college, and I got a job, and I was going to take it at night school, and I got a lot of overtime, and I dropped out. So I went through my junior year, and then I missed the film history class. Probably would have learned what I needed to know about to figure out what it is that's bothering me now. It is things have evolved in the making of media, movies and television shows, from when they first started. Not just the technology, the writing and the acting have changed and changed and changed and changed. Some of the best example would be Star Trek, the original series, The Next Generation. The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine and Voyager were all of a piece in terms of their place in cinematic and television history. And then there's the new ones, the Discovery, even Enterprise. Enterprise kind of got one step in between. It's got a foot in both worlds. But Discovery, Picard, they're made the way things are made now, and they have much more of a feeling of realism to me. That the acting is not stilted and wooden, and you go back to the Manchurian Candidate, and you had blocks of wood walking around the set.
With the haircuts, Lord, the haircuts.
And
that was back when everybody had the same haircut, and we don't care what shape your head is. We're going to cut it that way, even if it looks awful on your head. Oh.
And so, it's got to be a combination of the way people acted and the words they were given to act.
They had diction coaches, but no emotion coaches.
Yeah. And then I watched the interviews on that DVD the interviews were done in the 2000s up to 2015, I think was the most original one. And no one was fessing up to this. Everyone was, what a great movie this was. Oh, I had, such a good time. And, working with Frank Sinatra was awesome. And no one was saying, my God, were we a bunch of blocks of wood.
They really were, though. It seemed very, I think it's because of TV, you used to do a stage play with a camera pointed at you. And it's very, I want to say blocks of wood, but also like it seemed very stage to me. You can't do those small little emotional quirks. And for those of you listening to the audio podcast, I'm sort of like trying to move my small facial muscles. You can't do those on a stage and expect it to be communicated out to your audience. You have to communicate your emotion to your audience in big grand gestures and in big words. And it does make you look kind of wooden because let's face it, if you're an actor and you don't have to, like, why are you going to bother?
Yeah. You've got to play to the back row.
Yes. Project to the back row from your diaphragm, Jen.
Yeah. And we call it acting.
Yep.
My wife is going, what's he doing up there?
But this is one of the reasons I like Patrick Stewart in so many things, because he brings the thespian and he plays to the back row, and he is a block of wood surrounded by, especially in the Star Trek Next Generation, he's a block of wood surrounded by more modern actors, and it's exactly the dynamic you want because it makes him look fatherly to them. He is clearly of a separate generation, a much older generation, and therefore can be the father to the crew.
Yeah. And that what makes looking at Next Generation and Picard, the current CBS All Access version of Star Trek, interesting, because you got the actors from the Next Generation, and currently in Picard, you got Patrick Stewart, you got Jonathan Frakes.
It's still a block of wood in it.
I think he's come.
He's a slightly softer block of wood. He's an aged block of wood, but he's still.
I think the square edges have been sanded off, and now if he's doing anything that is block of wood like, he's also doing it with a wink.
I would like to, I don't remember which episode it is, but see, this will get you guys to pull up CBS All Access and watch it. He's supposed to be giving an interview to a woman about a decision that he made as captain of the Enterprise or as an admiral or something. And he's supposed to be looking very uncomfortable about doing that. And he's supposed to be very uncomfortable about doing it because all of the other characters have mentioned how uncomfortable he is feeling or will be feeling or must have been feeling. But for the life of me, I didn't get discomfort off of him at all. Like,
I'll have to go. I think that's the first episode. I'll have to go watch that again.
Yeah, and that's where I was like, oh, okay, he's softened a little bit. You can see that, like, he's modernized slightly, but he's still playing to the back row.
Okay, I'll be rewatching that series again in a minute. I'm rewatching Discovery now, the last season of Discovery, because that's going to be the next thing that comes out. So I'd like to bring myself up to speed before the new series comes out. I don't know when that's coming. I hope it's soon, but I don't think it will be. So then when I rewatch Picard, I'll be watching for that, because my impression just from the first pass was, no, they pulled themselves up into the 21st century, back from the 24th. So, well, we'll see. Awesome. I think we've solved all of the problems of the world and then some.
I'll be interested to see how voting works in November, who I get to vote for in November, and how many candidates have passed away due to coronavirus before we get to November that they magically have to fill the seats of at the very last minute.
Coronavirus or old age in some cases.
And I will reiterate, there was a period of time where it was like Tulsi Gabbard and me were the only two options for somebody who was considered at low risk of COVID-19 who were presidential candidate options. Now it's just me. Because in 2016, because it was 2017, I filed the paperwork to be a presidential candidate.
You had mentioned that.
Yeah, well, it was purely to control the narrative of the news media, because they were starting to talk about how Trump had also filed for re-election already, and he was starting to get steamroll. The only candidate, the only option right now. And I was like, well, we can change that. So then he wasn't the only option anymore, and they didn't want to do a profile of me, so they stopped talking about it entirely.
That's the reason, I'm sure. So,
and since you don't, I don't know what the process is to eliminate my candidacy. I'm sure there is one, but I never learned it because it was just, I filled out the first form, and I'm sure there's a second form that I never filled out.
What party?
I'm still viable.
Or independent? Party or independent?
Independent.
Okay. Well, so the next episode, we'll need to talk about that. And then you're also going to explain to us how the economy, no matter what happens with COVID-19, it's already fucked anyway.
It is. It is. But, people, we have this excellent opportunity to be excellent to one another right now and to barter. And I'm seeing the barter economy take place. So, just keep being excellent to one another. And, screw economists and the Fed and the U.S. Mint. They'll figure their way out eventually, but we don't need to wait for them.
All right. You are Nanny Jen.
I am.
The host, one of the hosts of the NannyCast, nannycast.com. So stop by there. A highly produced, tight, relatively short by comparison to this program, compact
reference podcast,
and focused show, which means that you're either really enjoying the freedom here or it's driving you crazy.
No, I'm really enjoying the freedom here.
Okay. To talk about anything you want, and feel free to grab the wheel and yank it into another lane anytime you want. And I'm Gary Pierce. There's a clever little title, Biden My Time, Biden, Biden My Time. And this has been Biden, ? #Me Too, ! Now you understand the ambiguity of the title. We've gotten all the way through it. May 10th, 2020, episode 88.
Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers and grandmothers and mothers to be out there.
Indeed. Happy Mother's Day. And I'm hovering over the button that will turn things off. But because of the way YouTube and Facebook work, where they cut things off early, we'll do our close, and then we'll just hang here as...
I've been waiting. Those on the audio cannot see this, but hopefully I'll give you some audio. Oh, yeah. I have a ceramic teacup with a lid.
It is gorgeous.
This is the way that it's done in certain other countries, and it keeps your tea very, very hot. And so I am closing with showing off the concept of a lid for your teacup. If you don't have to get one with a lid, but if you have a tiny little saucer, put it on top of the teacup instead of underneath the teacup, and it'll keep your tea warmer.
Yep.
There's my goodbye tip.
If you're totally YouTube averse, there'll be a picture of that on the Triangle Talk Show website, triangletalkshow.com. I was going to put this up at the front of the show, and I forgot. When you do your shows, you promote stuff at the beginning. Things like...
Yeah, we have a pre-recorded stinger that goes up in the front, and it's my voice, and I recorded it, 5 years ago or something. And I don't even remember what it says anymore because I don't have to listen to it. We just toss it on the file.
Something about voting and liking.
Oh, yeah. It asks for reviews. I believe it's Stitcher because the team at that time decided that getting in bed with Apple and relying too heavily on the Apple Podcasts ecosystem was not the direction we wanted to go because Apple is a benevolent dictator, but a dictator nonetheless. So they felt that Stitcher was a better dictator that was less likely to be capricious. And so I think it asks for reviews at Stitcher, I remember something blogging about us or tweeting about us. So we wanted people to get the word out there about us as a podcast. And then we had a hashtag, which was NannyCast, which is the name of our show. And then I think it says, and if you want to go one step further, hop on over to nannycast.com and click on contact us, or no, support us.
Oh yeah, and you tell people that if they're just listening, well, they're missing half the important information.
Oh yeah, and they're missing the show notes because we as a reference podcast, we cite our sources. And so our show notes contain our bibliography and further follow-up steps, because we are a reference podcast, so we're introducing certain topics that you are going to want to learn about and know about and use to affect your daily life if you are a nanny. So, obviously there would be a follow-up, like if you've talked about the legal implications of a nanny's tax status, well, maybe you actually want to see the part of the IRS code where that is located. So that's in our podcast
Sounds
notes
like
and so on.
Way too much like work for me. But
you're not a reference podcast, so you're not meant to be evergreen. And
I put a few links on the webpage, which become the show notes on your podcast app. You can find them if you ever do anything but push play. If you push it, sideways or whatever you do to find out the next thing, the background information that comes along on your podcast app, it's there. None of you have ever seen it, but it is there, and you'll see my show notes as well. But on the website, there'll be pictures. So my wife is standing at the door. Are you wondering when we're going to be done?
I'm like T-minus 10 minutes for dinner.
Perfect, because we're just about finished. She says T-minus 10 minutes for dinner.
Ooh, my dinner beeped about a half an hour ago, so it's ready to go.
It's cold now.
No, I have it in the Instant Pot, so it's on keep warm.
Oh, good. Okay, so perfect.
I plan ahead.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to push the off button, but we have to say the three little words that end every Triangle Talk Show podcast. Over. Over.
Oh, am I supposed to do the rest? And out.
Yeah. I'm giving you. I doubled.
It used to be over and then I said out.
Yeah, I doubled.
Now
I doubled your workload, and I'm gonna double your salary as a consequence.
You get all of $0. Yes.
2 times 0.
I mean, that's a podcast topic that